Hey, what's up, guys? It's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for this episode of my random horror reviews. Today's movie is an American remake of a Spanish found footage film. I don't know why I'm building up the mystery, it's the title of today's video. So, today's review is for 2008's Quarantine. I guess for maybe those who don't know, as I was saying, this is an American remake of a Spanish found footage movie titled Wreck. So if you've seen Wreck, you'll pretty much know the gist of this movie. It's pretty much the exact same movie, a few minor changes, but the main thing this time it's in English, when before it was in Spanish, obviously. So to be completely honest, I'm actually not a massive fan of the original Wreck or Quarantine either. That's probably the reason why this was only a second time watch for myself. I had seen it once before, and obviously gave it a rewatch for today's review. But with that being said, I have nothing against Wreck either or Quarantine. They're both entertaining enough films, they fly by, they're fairly solid. It's just more of a personal taste thing, I presume. But with that being said, rewatching Quarantine this time around was probably the most that I've enjoyed either Wreck or Quarantine. And I'm tying them in both together because Wreck is pretty highly regarded when it comes to found footage movies. A lot of people really enjoy that film, so I guess me saying that I'm not a massive fan is maybe a unpopular opinion. Just wanted to put that out there. But focusing in on Quarantine, like I said, rewatching it this time around was probably the most I've ever enjoyed it. But before I get into my deep thoughts, we'll quickly go into the plot for this one. Like I was saying, if you've seen Wreck, you'll know the plot for this one. There are a few minor differences, but the main thing is this time it's in English. But in this movie, we follow a reporter and a cameraman who do these exclusives, following people through the night. And in this episode that they're recording, they're following firemen, and they get called to this building. They're not really sure what's going on, but they end up getting locked in there, and they're not sure why. There's all these helicopters flying around, and the windows and doors are getting locked and boarded up, and it turns out that there's a virus inside. And now you have these people, residents, the reporter, the fire people, trying to get out and survive. And yeah, that's pretty much the story that we have for Quarantine. So let's get into my thoughts of this movie. So like I've already said multiple times through the introduction, I've never really been completely sold on Quarantine or Wreck, and I also know that I keep bringing up Wreck, but of the two movies, I feel like majority of horror fans would definitely gravitate towards Wreck more. But sticking to Quarantine for now, again, I've never really been sold on this one. Whenever I have, an urge to watch either Quarantine or Wreck, I gravitate more towards Wreck. I just think that's purely because it's the original. Even though it's in Spanish, I'd probably prefer to watch that one, especially when the remake and original are so similar. You might as well just watch the original. But with that being said, I did enjoy Quarantine more this time around. It still didn't blow me away or anything. It wasn't a complete change of mind or anything, but this was probably the most I've ever enjoyed Quarantine. I think what helps firstly is this movie isn't ridiculously long. It has a runtime of 85 minutes, which I know isn't ridiculously short either, but I think on top of that, this movie is pretty non-stop, and it keeps everything going at a pretty rapid pace. And if you've seen this movie before, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. There is like little to no downtime in this movie whatsoever. From the time they enter the building, which is probably at the 10-minute mark of this movie's runtime, it just goes and goes and goes and pretty much never stops. It's pure chaos from there. And any time it does slow down is just to purely build suspense. So it's not like, it's a dialogue heavy movie or anything. It's pretty much on the pulse constantly. And even before, our reporters and firemen and everything reach the building, like I said, at the 10-minute mark, the start of this movie is still pretty engaging. They're hanging around the firehouse, they're talking about their daily routines and doing interviews, and I actually find that pretty entertaining and pretty engaging. It feels real. It feels like a genuine interview and something that you would watch on TV, so I found that engaging as well, and like I said, I think that helps to the movie's flow overall. So there really is a lot to like about a movie like Quarantine, and I definitely understand why a lot of people gravitate towards a movie probably more so like Wreck than Quarantine, which, while I'm on that topic, I kind of do and don't understand why so many people really love Wreck, but then in the same breath hate on Quarantine. I understand it because I'm an example of someone who doesn't like a copy and paste remake. You know, if it's the exact same thing as the original, I know this is an example of translating from Spanish to English, but you still might as well change it up more than what they have in this example. But then, in the same breath, like I said, I kind of don't understand because it pretty much is cut from the same cloth. It pretty much is close enough to be the exact same movie, just translated. So to say that you love Rec but then hate Quarantine, I don't understand. You might as well just say, you know, Quarantine's an annoying film to me because they might as well changed it up. You can't say you hate the movie when it's pretty much the exact same. But staying on Quarantine for a while, sorry, a little ramble there. A lot to like about it, you know, the rapid pace, the claustrophobic environment is a big factor as well, being isolated in this one location, a big tall building but very narrow, a lot of chaos going on around you. It does make you feel quite claustrophobic. Really good gore in this movie as well, and effects. I know I brought it up in the plot description, but following around the firemen in their day-to-day, you know, around the firehouse during the early part of this movie, I actually feel is pretty cool, and I find that interesting and engaging. The found footage element of this movie, believability can be a make and break when it comes to found footage, and I feel like the acting and the cast here do a fairly good job, and do make it feel somewhat believable, especially, as I said, during the early part when, you know, they're doing the interviews with the firemen and following them around the firehouse. It does feel like something you would watch on TV. The idea of being isolated and trapped is really creepy, but then add on the fact that you're pretty much being left to die these horrible deaths because people are locking you in there. Yes, for the better of the city, so this virus doesn't get out, but it is very creepy scenario to be in. And then the fact that you're put in a point of view, you know, with this found footage element, you know, it does also add another layer to it. Not just from watching it this time around, but I've also always really enjoyed the unraveling of how the infection started, because that is a big question. They're like, where did this infection come from? And it eventually, you know, trails back and they find out where it's come from. And I've always enjoyed the payoff by the end of the movie. I think it's kind of cool. So like I said, there is a lot to enjoy with a movie like Quarantine. And this is probably the most that I've ever enjoyed watching Quarantine. But still, overall, I feel like my opinions haven't changed too much. Sometimes that happens, it's just a personal taste or outside factors that play into it. I still think it's a pretty cool movie. For a rating out of 10, I'm going to give Quarantine a 7. Like I said, I sort of do and don't understand, you know, people loving Rec but then not loving Quarantine. Like I said, it's pretty much cut from the same cloth. Yes, you would like to see something a little bit different rather than just changing it from Spanish to English. That's probably my biggest fear about the upcoming Speak No Evil remake that's coming, because it pretty much looks like the exact same film that we got a couple years back, just in English. And I did really like that movie, so it probably means that I'll still enjoy this one, but you still might as well just change it up a little bit, give us something a slight bit different to, you know, not make it feel so repetitive. But I guess we'll see. Thank you for joining me for this review, guys. Like I said, Quarantine, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Didn't blow me away, but still an enjoyable enough watch, and like I said, probably the most I've ever enjoyed this movie. If you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments below, guys, and thank you for joining me for this review, and I'll see you for another video soon, guys. Peace.